Hi, I'm James Woodfield Jones and welcome to Ordinary or Extraordinary. From the age of 4, I have always had an obsession with martial arts. I had a dream, I had a vision to be involved in martial arts, to coach and train for a lifetime. Fast forward 40 years and now I'm a successful owner of a studio and I get to live my dream of sharing this beautiful art with many, many people. In this podcast, we'll be speaking to ordinary but extraordinary people who have lived their dreams, had a vision, and gone forth, committed through hardships and through adversity, and made their dream happen. We hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to speaking to many extraordinary people on this podcast. Ordinary or extraordinary. In this episode, I chat to Roy Dean, an author, an educator, an entrepreneur, and a world-renowned martial artist. Listen to his story, where he's come from, and what he's achieved. I really enjoyed talking to Roy, absolute gentleman, and he is extraordinary. Okay guys, welcome to the first podcast of Ordinary or Extraordinary. I'm blessed to have Roy Dean in front of me here. He is an author, an educator, and an entrepreneur, a martial arts, world-renowned martial artist, and holds black belts in Judo, Aikido, and a 3rd degree in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I had the pleasure of meeting Roy Dean a few years back in LA. And when I say ordinary to extraordinary, the first person is Roy I thought of. So thank you so much for joining us, Roy.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it, James.
I appreciate it. And I see this beautiful background you have there. Where are you at present?
So I'm up in Anchorage, Alaska, where I grew up. I'm up here for the summer. And most of the time I reside in Southern California, but it's nice to be up here and just kind of switching it up. It's a little bit rainy today, but I don't mind. And it's always good to come back home and reconnect with the mountains. And there's some elements of Alaska that are really unique.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. That was actually going to be a question. So you're originally from Alaska?
That's correct. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. And what sort of a child were you growing up in Alaska, Roy?
I would say I was definitely someone who was curious. My mother did a great job, I think, by encouraging me to be involved in the arts. Whether that was, they didn't push me into martial arts. That was something I got into later as a teen, kind of on my own. But she supported me drawing and most importantly, musically. I had an interest in the piano. And so she supported me entering into that world and taking lessons. And I think the musical education I got really influenced just everything that came after. And it influences my jiu-jitsu game. I mean, it's been a long time since I've actually played the piano, but there's something about the repetition that's necessary to be able to have something be intuitive and then eventually emotional, so you can express emotion through the rehearsed actions that are natural and unnatural at the same time, and kind of the benefits of practicing slow and developing precision. Music is we are so finely attuned and like emotionally resonant with what happens in music. It really gives you a chance to develop a certain kind of sensitivity, both internally and with your body. And there's something about music that I think there's a lot of overlap with martial arts.
I like that. And like you said, the emotional side of it as well. I think that, with a lot of sports, it's all very physical, but what about that emotional intelligence? And I mean, I suppose it gives you confidence, because it's discipline, isn't it, to learn an instrument or with music, and it's a very much inner to outer for the music, I could imagine.
Definitely. And there were some aspects of it that I wasn't that, I was much better playing by ear than sight reading music. I could read music, but I would find myself counting, okay, that's a C, and then you would go up the scale, and whereas my teacher, for example, I was like reading a book. he was so fluent. He could read anything and play anything. And that never came that intuitively to me, but it's certainly something I admired. And you just have to, just like martial arts, you have to realize, I can work at it, but it's not, I may never have that. That's okay. It doesn't mean that I can't play the piano. It doesn't mean I can't write music. It doesn't mean that I can't do, but that person's kind of, through a combination of hard work and natural intuition, they're more advanced.
I couldn't agree more. And this is a very applied to everything in life, isn't it? The feel is more than, the old saying, I think too much. I think maybe in the Western world, people think a little bit too much and not feel enough, which is perfect for jiu-jitsu, because this is very much, you don't do jiu-jitsu, you must think about, or feel, jiu-jitsu, which is very important.
Certainly. And that, and it takes a while. It takes a while to be able to, we trust our logical side so often that we're like, oh, I must have to know the moves in order to counter his moves. Yes. But as you know, eventually you just feel where they're going.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's over time and gained over time, and trusting yourself. I try to tell my friends, if you trust yourself and trust all the decisions you make, but try to feel. And I try to do the same with my life. I try not to think too much. And I say this in context. I try to feel more. If I feel it, I do it. And I think that's trusting yourself is massive in that behalf. So well done to your mum for getting into music. Did that lead on to martial arts down the track, or something you came across?
She encouraged me to do some other things as well. One of them was skiing, downhill skiing. And, in Alaska, that's you need to have something to do in the winter.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of my friends played hockey, and I would do they have a resort here called Alyeska, a couple other resorts, and I would go and ski. I was in elementary school, and, a lot of people raced, but I just did it to do it. And I enjoyed it. And there was something about trusting your weight when you shift from side to side, leaning into it, and that kind of, I think, early balance training has helped me kind of cross over, from skiing. Definitely not, I was good, but not, I wouldn't say expert or elite level in any way. But, and then I look at surfing, which I'm not a surfer, but I intuit that it's probably pretty similar. The skiing, the leaning into it, the carving, trusting your weight. I think that also was kind of early, valuable, foundational training for me.
Yes, yeah, and again, very much a felt sense, isn't it, for skiing? I've actually never skied. I'm from England originally. I've done a lot of sledding and been pulled around in a sled as a little guy, but I've never actually skied. But I did skateboard. I don't surf over here. I live in Australia now, of course, but surfing's very popular here. But I did used to skateboard, and the same sort of very much a felt sense. There's not much thinking done there, only feeling. And again, the slopes, but it's very dangerous on the slopes, I can imagine.
Oh, yeah, there are some, I had a couple wipeouts for sure.
So did that lead you into, did you find martial arts? Did you come across martial arts? What was the first martial arts that you actually started? Because I believe you've done a lot of Aikido as well as Jiu-Jitsu and Judo also.
Yeah, that's correct. So I got a little bit of training when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old. I did some karate, and I didn't stay that long, maybe less than a year. Yes. I didn't, to be honest, my brother was doing it. I was doing it. We wanted to do it, but I didn't really understand what was happening in the class. Yeah. I was just kind of following along, and there was we went to a tournament, and I just kind of I had no idea what was going on. I just followed my little group of kids, and then, I'm up, and then I'm just throwing stuff, and I scored a point or whatever. It just, that cognition had not totally cemented yet.
Yeah.
But so I had a little bit of kind of that, a little bit of training when I was a child. But then when I was 16, I went to Japan as an exchange student.
Yeah.
And they encouraged me to do a Japanese art after school. And I thought there were several different options. Kendo was another option. But I wanted to do judo. I wanted to learn how to fight. Not to learn how to fight, but at least to have that, not because I want to fight, but we're all striving to like tap into our manhood and like feel that warrior. And I was fortunate that I entered into kind of a warrior art. I mean, you can express like so many of my friends, they played, football or hockey or whatever. So they had this channel where they could be athletic, have kind of an outlet for their, hormonal responses that are just kind of going off the charts. So you need to be able to channel your energy into something, and then to have that something not only give you an identity as a martial artist, which I think is important. I think everybody needs, particularly in those formative teenage years.
Yes.
I think that's really important. And then you learn how to fight. Maybe you're not a complete fighter, but you certainly know how to throw somebody if they attack you. Yeah. And there's a real sense of confidence there. Plus, there's a little bit of magic involved. The first time I tied up with my judo coach, or he was the captain of the team, they allowed me to spar, and he threw me so many times. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I loved it. And I wanted to do that too. I just imagine myself being able to do what he did to me.
Yeah. That's beautiful, because that's evolution, isn't it? Like you said before about it's evolution for us we don't really go hurt anybody, but I think it's actually a direct link to really understanding who you are. When you can roll jiu-jitsu, throw judo, aikido, anything combative that's like that with the mind and the body, it takes utmost control of your inner self to actually deploy the techniques per se, which is evolution in itself. And confidence, violence is probably one of the most concerned thing for most people. Once you knock it on the head, you feel like a limitless, I suppose, powerful. And then, you can obviously defend yourself, but then whatever you go to choose to do next in a career or a relationship, you have inner confidence. And I think that's the most important thing. And going from Alaska to Japan at 16 years young, that's actually quite young. Was that a bit of a shock for you? Because I remember when I joined up Taekwondo Shotokan in England, I begged Mum to do it at 4.5. Begged and begged, and then she signed me up, and I cried for about a week. So, so that must have been quite a challenge for a 16-year-old to go to Japan.
Even though I had as ideal a situation as one could hope for, I did it through the Rotary Club. They set me up with 3 different host families. One was kind of typical Japanese family, middle class, very, very nice. And they had other kids that went to my school. Then they set me up with a very wealthy family. And then they actually set me up with the president of the Rotary Club, who was a priest. So I lived in a temple for the last like 3 months that I was there. Yeah, that was really cool. And they had the most beautiful garden, kind of like the city garden was in my backyard. So it was really, that was nice. So in a way, I tried not to be too much of a spoiled brat. I was still like a little disoriented and upturned with being in Japan. It's definitely a different climate than Alaska. Very hot, very humid. I'm wearing a French military uniform as I go to school. I'm hearing about the other exchange students that are like in Rio de Janeiro, like partying on the beach. Or one of my friends went to South Africa and they just did like safaris all year.
Yeah.
And then here I am like suffering in this Japanese school. And I was like, oh man, this is not But as I look back on it, they took great care of me,
Yes.
and they exposed me to so many wonderful things. I was able to go skiing. I was able to go to these different camps with the other exchange students, and they helped me learn judo.
Mm.
I had I had a really good coach at the, although it was all Japanese, so I didn't really. It was just monkey see, monkey do,
And also
right?
energy, vibrations, and you pick it up. Even if you can't understand the language, you get the sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. It actually makes you, sharpen in
Yes.
on the movements a little bit more. It's like, okay, I'm really paying attention now.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that the discipline, did that teach you something, the discipline? Because you said you stayed in a temple, which I think that would be amazing, for, especially at 16 years young, because I don't see many, not many 16-year-olds, especially of the Western world, would actually have a chance to do so. And I think that would be actually a really good start for maybe introduced to meditation and more
yeah,
self-control of yourself.
it was, mm, it wasn't that I was just kind of treated as a guest and I didn't have to get up in the morning and do anything
Oh.
in particular. I kind of had the cush experience there, but, but certainly judo taught me so much about discipline
Hmm.
and hard work, really.
Yeah.
And there's something to the, although I've always wanted to do a good job, and I've always wanted to get good grades. I've always wanted to do well. I've been ambitious since I was, young. I just, something in me wants to do that.
Hmm.
And judo is both very, very humbling and gritty.
Yes. Yeah. A grind.
It is a grind. It is tough. You get calluses, you get sprains, and you're young, and and you're still hurt. And it takes so many repetitions to be able to really pull off a throw. And then I'm dealing with the nerves. I had to go do a shiai every month or a competition, and then you're there, and and your teammates are watching you, and or classmates are watching you, or whatever. There was a lot of additional responsibility, and of course, as a foreigner or gaijin, you're in the spotlight.
Yes.
So it's like, you're working hard and you're just trying to make a good impression and keep it all together and learn as much as you can. I had a little one voice inside of me that said, like, really do it this year. You'll never regret it.
And what age was that, Roy?
That was like I was 16, turned 17. About when I was 17, I was like, don't stop applying yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you think, was that something you'd had before, or did you just, do you think that trip had taught you something there?
Um, well, it's interesting because it was that intuitive voice inside of me. Something was telling me, like, you'll never regret it
Mm-hmm.
if you give it your all this year. In judo, in particular, not necessarily like Japanese language or the cultural experience of that, but judo for whatever reason.
Mm.
And like nowadays, people know about jujitsu, right? It's popular because of the UFC. People could not say jujitsu
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. It was far too foreign,
Yes.
and no one knew judo either. Like, judo, what is that? It's kind of like wrestling, but jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu has done so much of um, a return of the favor to the arts that preceded it.
Mm,
I think it's brought increased popularity to judo, just like Aikido brought enhanced recognition of Daito-ryu Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, what preceded Aikido.
mm-hmm.
I think BJJ helped bring more prominence in America, in particular, and
Yes.
respect to judo.
Am I correct
And
in saying that the judo in Japan, the traditional side, is very much like jujitsu? Because most people think judo is just a lot of throws, don't they? But I believe I've seen something on YouTube with the tradition judo, where it's actually like watching a jujitsu class. Just start standing.
they had their own kind of old school recipe for class,
Mm-hmm.
which was oh gosh, it's difficult to remember. It was get on the mat, we bow, and I think we just went into uchikomi. I think we just did a ton of uchikomi, and occasionally we do some different drills. There was not much. I do remember one of the smaller players like, "Oh, here, wrestle with me," and he did newaza, and I couldn't do anything. He was choking me, but I didn't really. I was like, "Whoa, that's really powerful. That's something." I don't know what that was, but that was really something.
But I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. Strangely, I'd like to do that again. So, and then when it came to every class ended with randori, then we would do push-ups or some kind of like high number calisthenic. A lot of those kind of Hindu or, the circular push-ups. And we would do like 100 and we'd go around the class and, top it off that way. We also had like a very short, I would say mokso at the end, so just a moment of meditation that we would do. And I kind of miss that. They still do it in Aikido and some Japanese jiu-jitsu styles, but that's something that I kind of miss in modern martial arts.
More holistic, isn't it? It's keeping the holistic values of the martial arts, which is actually something that I, resonated off yourself when I'd met you beforehand. LA. You seem to have more of a holistic understanding of the martial arts. Don't get me wrong, your physical game is superb also, but you could pick up, you had a lot more of an understanding of a holistic self, which I think you've probably picked up with. Obviously you were, you've had a great upbringing, but you've had that chance to go to Japan. And I think that's probably enhanced a lot of that for you, being in that environment. And environment is everything.
So true. And you're definitely picking up on something that I don't like overtly talk about that much, but before Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like I have an understanding of the history of Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
And so it's like BJJ is not the end all be all. It's powerful, but it's not the end all be all. And, I don't have any kind of religious zealotry about, that particular style. There are styles of Jiu-Jitsu that came before that are much more applicable to the time that they were in. BJJ or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I think it evolved and adapted to the rules and norms of fighting in Brazil, and you look at some of the old, some of the older styles of Jiu-Jitsu that are adapted with, for wearing armor or for leverage defenses against weapons that we don't use. And it's kind of cool to study that and recognize. You can see, I was just looking at some Aikido footage and the weapons, both sword disarms and, a jo against a sword, or, a staff against a sword, or, these various, and some of the defenses are not that practical. But it's still, you can see the extension of the energy. You can see the energy vectors when they're extending with their, and you can really read it differently. It's not just a sword and a sword. These are vectors against each other. And I think that's really cool. And I actually think that's more where the future of Jiu-Jitsu, because Taijitsu or just whether standing or on the ground, it's cool, it's deep, but we're kind of at a point where we're developing very, very sophisticated answers for questions that only arise in competition or in rarefied circumstances. Against other elite athletes, against really other skilled players, you have to have, and those, but on the street, it's very simple questions that need very simple answers. And so, in a way, I think that people might find the weapons work of Aikido or some of these other styles interesting because it's Jiu-Jitsu and it's an extension of Jiu-Jitsu, a different way of looking at it. It's still there.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think that's like you said, it's long forgotten because it's all the complexity. When, like everything, we must come back to the simplicity. And you said about the self-defense. I said, there's one thing adapting to someone who's got a performance as well, almost, and I say with great respect, of course, almost easier. But you get
Oh
someone
yeah.
who goes wild and just does, there is no rules and there is no way to do it for them. It's just survive. Then you'll be very much highlighted to see what actually works in some regards and what doesn't work, because there's a very much a difference. So I think if you can have a game from a personal point of view, if you can have a game that attaches to the performance athlete and to the for a lack of a better word, thug, then you're going to see a big difference. But
Yeah.
the holistic, I think there's martial arts is magnificence in general. There's so much good from, I mean, you can take something from everything. And I think there is a bit of a closed-minded for some that this is the way to do it, or this is the only way to do it, or this is the only art, when there's so much beauty in everything and it can be collaborated. Your coach, Roy Harris, I know you touch him and your wrists going.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that's come from, I say, jiu-jitsu, pure Brazilian jiu-jitsu has come from other things. And
Definitely.
he's a phenomenal human being in himself. We'll get to him later.
That sounds good.
So you weren't gone from judo to, did that lead then straight into Aikido there, Roy?
Yeah, during that time when I was in Japan, and I was fascinated by Steven Seagal. He was,
Many were.
yeah, exactly. Such a strong media presence at that time, at the height of, I guess, movies, cinema was kind of the best way of exposing people to martial arts. And he did it in a really dramatic and phenomenal way, and kind of he had a cool image at the time. And it was really it made a lot of people very hungry to learn about Aikido.
Yes.
And I was actually interested in learning about Aikido, but they didn't have it available when I was in Japan. I mean, it was around, but it wasn't around where I was. Judo was available.
It wasn't as big as judo back then.
No, definitely not. Judo is like wrestling here in the U.S.
Yes.
It's available at all the high schools. It's embedded in the culture much more deeply.
Yes, yeah. And so Aikido, did you once you've done a little judo now, done a little Aikido, what led you to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Jiu-Jitsu in itself?
Well, watching Hoyce beat people, and he had a similar body type to me, and I was like, man, I mean, I understood the arm locks he was using. I understood the chokes he was using, but I didn't really. My newaza was really crude. It was just basically keisagata. That's it, So I kind of understood what he was doing, but I marveled. I remember remember how they used to have those pre-roll, like them training in the gym before they're showcasing their art.
I love those. My favorite.
Yeah, no, that's in many ways, that's the best part. Yeah. And the way Hoyce would float into the arm lock through the weight transfer through his hands, I was like, whoa, how did he do that? I hadn't really seen it that smooth. And it really made me want to learn Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Yes. It wasn't available, so you end up kind of going off of knockoff brands, which I'm talking about early days. So I ended up training with a guy who had trained with a guy who was a blue belt.
Yeah. So you'd come back from Japan now you're back in the States?
Yeah, I'm back in Alaska. I'm doing Aikido.
Yep.
Just for the chronology, I went to Japan, came back. Then I went to Canada for a year, graduated high school there. And then when I came back to Alaska, I was very hungry and serious about being dedicating myself to Aikido. So I looked into study abroad programs like an uchideshi, or a live-in student experience. And I ended up finding a great teacher in Monterey, California. And I was kind of dabbling. I was still doing Aikido, but I kind of dabbled with a little bit of BJJ, but not really competent or real instruction.
Yes.
More of guys just get together and like, I saw this and we could do that. And,
Yeah, get some bad
crude.
DVDs, good DVDs, or VHSs, I should say.
Yeah, oh
VHSs
yeah,
back then.
definitely. And then when I moved to California, I was able to begin training under Claudio França,
Mm-hmm.
who is a Brazilian champion in Northern California in Santa Cruz. And so I was living in a Japanese jiu-jitsu dojo, but then I would commute once a week up to his dojo, and I started training there. And that was like the very early days of real Brazilian jiu-jitsu instruction in the US.
Yes, yeah.
And it was tough. Those guys were hungry, they were tough, and the calisthenics were tough. Everyone wanted to be a fighter, and it was kind of brutal. But Claudio was, he was very, I wouldn't say strict, but he demanded a lot of you physically. Like the warm-ups were tough, and he had good technique, and you sparred hard, and this is the life of an athlete, and I'll see you again next time.
Yeah. So it wasn't so much about even the everyday people back then. It was more geared towards fighting. If you're in here, you're fighting. There was no playful.
Compared to, he definitely had the sport emphasis.
Yes.
He was a Nidan in judo as well, so and they had boxing gloves, but we didn't really do a lot of vale tudo stuff. We didn't really do any of that. And I have a friend who's a brown belt, and his original teacher, they did a lot of that stuff. A lot of people come in off the street, we'll take you, we'll show you what's up. Kind of like waiting for the challenge match.
Yeah.
These guys were tough, but they weren't looking for the challenge match.
Yes.
They just wanted to learn the jiu-jitsu.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that was a good starting point for you. And then you came across Roy Harris. How did you come across Roy Harris? He's a fascinating individual. He's a lovely man, and his game is phenomenal. I've only had a little to do with him. I've had the pleasure of having him here, and I know you've studied underneath him for a long time. Very epic.
Everything about that man is epic. He, from the way he thinks to the breadth of martial arts, ancient and modern, that he studied. He's an amazing man, an amazing martial artist, and I kind of feel that people don't even understand the depths that he possesses. It's really, it's like a well-kept secret. And I mean, he is well known and flies all over the world and teaches, but still, given how deep he is, but and perhaps one reason is he's not really seeking attention in that way. He never tries to, he's a very principled Christian man, very principled, very Christian. And I came across him. I moved to San Diego to finish up university. I went to UC San Diego. He was doing the jiu-jitsu class that you could take as a student, or you could take it as a member of the community, and they had it on the campus in what they called the combat room. Yes, at the college. So he was teaching it, and I had been to a couple of different dojos looking for my next teacher, because I'm loyal, so I would have been under Claudio, but I was a blue belt, and I need to. If you're a blue belt, if you're a brown belt, I probably would have stayed under Claudio, but I was a blue belt. I was still very formative years for me. So I was looking for a teacher. Fabio Santos was suggested. Claudio introduced me to him. Vitor Belfort had actually just opened a gym in San Diego, and he was like big star at that time. That didn't really go anywhere, but that he was around. There were a bunch of people around in the San Diego scene, but I kept hearing good things about Roy Harris. And then I went to a tournament that was very well run. And a lot of the tournaments back in those days were so terribly run. So it boils your blood just to be like, I can't believe you'd waste people's time like this. But it was really well run, and there were great fights, thoughtful matchups. It was really cool. And the organizer he got his blue belt under Hoist, but then he was I think he was a purple now under Roy Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And he took some time, we connected, and he's like, yeah, he's a really amazing teacher. So I went to his academy on my birthday. I guess that was December 4th, 1999. And I didn't meet him that day, but I trained, I liked it. And then I ended up sticking with him. And he was that teacher. I'm always attracted to these teachers that are a little bit on the outside. You know, both in my Japanese jiu-jitsu, you know, Julio Toribio had mastered several different classical jiu-jitsu systems and kind of founded his own. And, you know, he was a genius in many ways, really a phenomenal martial artist. But he was, you know, he'd been kicked out by the traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. They sent letters to the other dojos in the area and stuff, like just to let you know, banned. Oh, yeah.
Do you think so?
He's a bad boy.
So, from aside from his, you know, technique and his knowledge, a lot of to do with the person who he is, which, you know, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. He's very holistic in himself as well as you are.
Absolutely, and he influenced me greatly in that way. You know, Roy Harris was. Because he came from more of a JKD background, he was able to see jiu-jitsu from a little bit outside, an outside perspective, just slightly outside the box of what jiu-jitsu was. Whereas most of the people were like, this is it. He was, you know, I remember him theorizing, okay, if I had to develop a counter art to jiu-jitsu, what would it focus on? It would focus on, you know, probably attacks from giving up your back and also footlocks to neglected areas. And then, of course, you could see that played out with Sakuraba strategies later.
That's right.
And Roy Harris, yeah, he made a lot of predictions on the UFC, and you know, he's a man ahead of his time, which I think in some ways makes him almost unfashionable.
Yes. Oh, of course. Absolutely. Anything different's unfashionable though, isn't it? and some people are scared of it and some people are embrace it. And and you embraced it. And thank goodness you did, because it gave you another element to your game and just embellished on what you have to where you are now.
Absolutely. And, you know, he also, so technically he thought outside the box and adopted, you know, heel hooks and footlocks and all this stuff, had a very open mind toward it, you know, was willing to break a lot of the rules that were in the art. And then also he was one of the first people to really, because I was like, oh no, I want to be a good fighter. I want to master this art. I want, you know, I just had that hunger. And he kind of like would chip away at, well, you know, you don't have to compete. You can compete if you want, but you don't have to compete. And when I told him one day after I'd done some competitions, I was like, dude, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. I was kind of beat up from a competition, and he's like, yeah, I was wondering when you would say that. He kind of saw through the medals and kind of that, you know, the hungry street dogs do, you know, snapping at each other in the street. He wasn't into it. He saw it more like, okay, this is a hobby for most people. A few people take it to that professional level.
Yeah, which is great, you know, fantastic. But what about self-discovery? What about using that art to self-discover? Defend yourself, absolutely, self-defense. But what about self-discovery, which I know you that's one of your taglines. I would say,
for sure.
Discover who you are, which I absolutely love, which is fantastic. And that
cool. I'm glad you like that, and you know, it stays true. It's after all these years, like, you know, I've never really wanted to change that because I'm still on that journey myself.
I think that's fantastic.
And it's something that is, one of my friends said, oh, jiu-jitsu's the truth. It's the truth of that day, of your performance with that partner. I mean, it keeps you grounded. It keeps it real. And, I'm 45, that there's an addictive quality in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of being the best, of tapping everyone, of being, like dominating. And I'm learning to let that go.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and Mr. Harris he encouraged me to let that go early. And he also thought about, I feel I should mention, he thought about community over the individual.
Yes.
And he kind of like blew me away with that. At first I was like, oh, how is that going to help my fighting? But,
Yeah.
but as an academy owner, as a leader in your community, as someone who's mentoring youth and adults, you need that perspective of the community and what you're really doing. What are you really doing?
Yes, exactly. And I couldn't agree more. And I think actually what's really important is once you start to let that bit go, as you said, so many things grow and the purpose of it grows, but you actually grow. And if you wanted to say your fighting actually gets better, because once you let it go, you actually get better. If you're focused only on the fight, and that was me for a short term back in the early days, but after 25 years of jiu-jitsu and 39 years of martial arts, I thought I'd only been in the last probably 5 to 10 years, 5 years, and again in the last 3 or 4 years, which is I really that resonated with me when we rolled in LA. And you could feel that. You could just feel that as soon as you play with someone. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a challenge play and there's a competition. And what we had was a challenge. But when you say that you're not competing with that person, then maybe the other person thinks that it's no good, but it's actually better, because then you actually can see what you can do. And you're so much better. You're free. And, the expansion of that is amazing. I couldn't talk about that enough. It is amazing. You'll grow so much.
It's so true. And, I've been able to, one of my good friends, fellow, third degree black belt in the desert, Anthony Mantanona, he's had some injuries, and, we've been able to roll. He can't roll fully. He's a monster on the mat. Instead, we do these little leverage games, with each other, and like giggle and like, oh my God, what, that was good. Or, oh, let's go back. Let's rewind. What was that right there? And being open and playing with that is just it's good at any level, but when you can do it with someone who's as sensitive as you are, it's just it's such a fine thing to tap into.
It's beautiful, and that's what I try to project my best, as well as my studio sustainable jiu-jitsu. Absolutely, that sort of mentality is number one, and that's why everybody on the mats has not only got a very good game and forever growing, but they understand again the bigger picture of it, and that's where the growth is. Did you what led you to, because you have a lot of books out, Roy, and a lot of DVDs. Is that something that you wanted to get out there because you've discovered and you've learned a lot from yourself and other teachers, and you wanted to share say a different way? Because your videos, your YouTube channel there is very different to others.
Everything new in this world is really a synthesis of the old. Disparate things coming together, and you get that hybrid genetics, hybrid vigor, from two different worlds. You get something that's a little bit stronger. And I felt like what I could bring to the table, what I could contribute, was a synthesis of martial arts, philosophy, like true martial philosophy.
Frozen there.
Oh yeah, that was
Sorry, we had a bit of a freeze there. My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. It says my thing is unstable too. Okay, I think we're good.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I feel that everything new we bring into the world is a synthesis of two different elements that you uniquely bring together. And that's, in genetics, they call it hybrid vigor, when the offspring is a little bit stronger than, the individual parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to blend worlds, the world of martial arts and martial arts philosophy, and then the world of media.
Yeah.
Because I had studied media, I was into it, and I really wanted to project something that kind of transmitted an energy of what I was about, but it didn't have to be over. It didn't have to be spoken what I was about. I wanted it to be transmitted. And so one way to do that is to make something beautiful, but it's like needlessly beautiful.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't need to even be that good or that, or that thoughtful. And that's when you start getting into that, I feel that I perform better when I'm aiming for that.
It's honestly.
Aiming. Yes. Yeah. Oh, there's definitely an element of honesty where it's like, it's truly my best effort, my best foot forward. And hopefully that comes through to the person, whether that's a belt demonstration or, just kind of a more artsy video, or one of these ones where I'm talking about a particular submission from different perspectives at belt ranks. I want to do something different. I felt like it would be a competitive advantage.
Yes.
And it certainly was. It opened up a whole world, literally the world, to me, because digital media is so easily distributed. What my affiliate in Norway right now, Christensen Camp Sports Center, they found me through my apps.
Yeah.
And being able to take this and have an informational product, so to speak, but the information is timeless. Right. And to be able to distribute that and have that there's many, many ways to empower people in this world. And that was a powerful technology. And I just wanted to move it a little bit away from the thug image of challenge matches and MMA.
Well,
I saw so much of what Aikido had morphed into. And I felt like, BJJ can help bring that back, where it's less, it's gone a little too far toward the art side. And when you do that, there are some other elements and benefits that can come up that are more heavily emphasized. But to keep it a little more grounded, and I mean that in every sense, you can really give people, for example, in the belt demonstrations, you can really you can temper your jiu-jitsu so precisely.
Yes.
To make somebody struggle and strain, to temper the spirit but not break it, to help them reach for something a little bit beyond.
Yes.
It's like you're a personal trainer and and a little bit of a therapist too, in a way, and
Yes.
and you're an instructor. It can be a deep thing, and to be able to transmit that, and then hopefully now have people under me that transmit that vision out there, bring it into their local community.
Yes.
And to have the flexibility and freedom and technical framework to be able to bring this empowering technology to people all over. A well-armed society is a polite society.
Oh, you couldn't have said it better. Exactly right. And all those elements you talked about, all the videos that you do, that certainly encompass those. And I completely understand what you're talking about there. You have the environment, you have the holistic view, you have the functionality, everything's coming together. And I think as coaches and people who are getting to share this art, and not just the art but ourselves with people, it is about building better people, more confident people, more powerful people, in the right words. It's so important. And I believe you have done that, and I can see that message in your videos, because that's what drew me to when we went to LA, we had Master Joe there, yourself there, and and then obviously to Roy Harris as well. And I very much see that. And the message that you wanted to get across, I believe, is getting across in every way. So it's a beautiful thing. And that's gone into not just your YouTube channel, you've got books as well. Is that right, Roy?
I do. I wrote 2 books, one called The Marshall Apprentice, which detailed my year living as an uchideshi in Monterey, California, for a Japanese jiu-jitsu and aikido master. That is, I just released an audiobook version of it as well.
Okay.
And it's interesting because I was so young. I didn't know how to categorize things. You know, I was like, oh, why is this woman lying? I don't understand why she tells these stories that couldn't possibly be true. You know, and she was, this particular character was a little bit of a grifter. But I didn't know those people yet. I was just wet behind the ears, you know, and it was a young man who was kind of wide-eyed at the world and trying to understand. But there's some things that hold up in that book.
Yes.
And then a more pop, and that's been available for a long time. I think I wrote it when it was over 20 years ago.
Wow.
So I think I was 24 when I wrote it. And then I wrote Becoming the Black Belt, which is kind of a long effort on, and that was a very personal book. I wanted to share the hero's journey there were 2 hero's journeys encompassed in it. One was getting my black belt, and then the other was running an academy.
Yes.
Which is like the finishing school for a martial artist. You know, then you really have to know the art inside and out, not just for your body type, for their body type, for their disposition, you know, just it's not about you, it's more about them.
Yeah, correct. And this is I couldn't agree more. And then what sort of challenges have you faced? So you obviously, this is a dream that you wanted to pursue, and you wanted to follow the martial arts, and you wanted to follow it down that track of having a studio and getting it out there and sharing it in your unique way. What sort of challenges have you faced as you go towards that? What made you keep pushing through and keep pushing through now?
Oh, there have been a lot of challenges.
How long have we got?
Right. I'll keep it to 30 minutes here. There were a lot of challenges. One, it's definitely not a socially accepted track. Although I would like to change that. I would like to help usher in an era where you have these independent, strong individuals that think of themselves as entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs and I guess empowerment specialists, but in a real way, not in a kind of like in the most gritty life coach way possible, you know, and to be able to, yeah. And then we have, hold on, I think my friend's going to come in here in a second, so there might be a little background noise.
That's no problem.
Okay. Another challenge that I faced is I didn't have any money when I started. I mean, I had some, but I wasn't sure how to spend it properly, because without having been a business owner before, having only been an employee, I just wasn't sure. You get tempted. Everyone's trying to give you advice, and everyone is trying to give you, everyone's trying to give you lessons on what is the best way to be successful in your new venture. For example, I had people that were, you know, the yellow pages. Oh, if you're not, and now, no, who's in the yellow pages? Dude, no,
what are the yellow pages?
What are the yellow pages, right? But they would tell you, and they would actually try to scare you. Oh, you're not going to be seen as successful. You're not even going to be seen as open. You know, you're not a real business unless you invest, and you got to get a full page ad. That's really the best thing. That's really going to be attention grabbing, you know, and you have advertisers, and I was kind of naive, and everyone's trying to sell you something. So that was another challenge, just kind of my own business naivete. And then injuries are another big challenge. You know, if you are involved in physical arts, you are going to have massive, massive emotional challenges when you get when you are. I'm sorry. Hold on a sec. I would say the third challenge is your injuries.
Yes.
When you get injured, it's very, very difficult to keep your spirit up.
Yes.
When you're the leader of the clan, you know, there's something, it's hard to rise to the occasion when you're feeling down physically and mentally, and you have to be there. And you know, sometimes you can put on that brave face, but other times, you know, I've had enough injuries where you say to yourself, okay, I know I'm not going to be like this forever. I will heal. But what you kind of in the early days, you get a back injury. You're like, I'm going to be like this forever. This is the new reality. You know, me hobbled, or my knee popped. I'll never be able to. You'll be okay. Experience teaches you that you'll come back from it.
Yes.
But you know, it's also disappointing when you are when your students demand a certain level of performance from you and you can't deliver.
Yes.
You know, that's disappointing to you. It's disappointing to them. When I had first gotten my black belt and launched the academy, this pinky, I had, during my black belt test, the tendon came off the bone and it was just hanging. And then I didn't see a specialist right at first, and it didn't heal properly, and it popped off again. And I just couldn't spar with my students the way that I wanted to. And it was incredibly frustrating. But you, as the head of the clan, have to take care of yourself enough. Don't sacrifice your body for them.
Yes.
Because otherwise it's going to be a short-lived career. Mm-hmm. You have to have the discipline to resist their temptations, to show off, to perform as hard as you can. Not every day is that day, you know? And so injuries are a huge challenge if you choose to embark on this martial path.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, very well said. Did you find that once you started to put things out onto YouTube, and I mean, for me, everything's positivity. You cannot attach a negative to a negative. It's impossible. So
Right.
Did you get a lot of a backlash and a lot of haters and a lot of negative comments on YouTube and things that you put out?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another challenge, to be able to kind of pierce that bubble, yes, so to speak, of like the illusion of praise and hate. Mm-hmm. You know, Marcus Aurelius is like, I mean, do you really, to paraphrase him, if you knew who these people were, you would not be interested in their approval. You know, you put the stuff out there, you hope for the best. Some people are inspired. Some people do take it in the right way. There's always, you know, when I first did the belt demos, they were like, this is gay. You know, I've gotten the gay thing for a long time with whatever, just for in every way. But like, this is pansy. I can't believe you're doing this to jiu-jitsu. How can you degrade the art by having these belt demonstrations? Wow. Other times people are, you know, people don't believe that you can be like really smooth and effective. You know, oh, it looks fake. I don't think he's very tough or whatever, you know, and you have to like take that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. People think I'm fake. People, you know, people think I'm not that good. You have to accept that. You have to accept that.
Yeah. Sorry, Roy.
Oh, no. And then a couple of years ago, I got into a little online squabble with my good friend, Stuart Cooper, and you know, we're way past it now. But it was interesting because I had gotten about 95% praise over the years, and then that suddenly have like like hate directed towards you, and for things that we were like, oh my God, that's exactly the opposite of the truth. And
Mm,
you're getting that, and then that really helps you pierce that bubble of like, oh, this doesn't mean anything.
correct. Yeah.
It was that kind of negative turned into a positive, because it really helped me see, number one, who's got my back,
Hmm.
who are my real friends, you know what is it all about? Is it about online praise? No way. It really kind of cured me of that, because there's
Mm.
a way you start living. I've seen it many times. I've had it happen to myself, where you start living for the recorded experience and the likes.
Yes,
And
kind of like your performance again on the mats, isn't it? Let it go, and everything comes back to life
exactly,
again.
exactly.
Mm.
So when it comes to those kind of like that social media projection, I've just I've resisted going for controversial topics. I've resisted going for negativity. I've resisted believing everything that's said about me, good or bad. You
Yes.
know, you have to just, uh, a couple years ago, I said, you know what? Forget it. Forget it all. Forget my reputation. Forget my own opinion of my own reputation.
Mm.
Like, let it go, and just keep your head down, work hard, make something of value, do something good, do something amazing. And the only way you get there is through a lot of hard work that nobody sees.
Mate, 100%. I'm on the same wavelength, and this is why we're talking now. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I think, Roy, I could speak to you for hours. Hopefully, it won't be our last chat that we have. But I appreciate your time. And for our first podcast of Ordinary and Extraordinary, you are certainly on the extraordinary for all your achievements. And what you put out, I think it's beautiful. And I think, apart from the fact that you're showing people a greater way to do martial arts, be it jiu-jitsu, aikido, judo, whatever it is that you put out there, I think the bigger message as well on top of that is how you're putting it out there in that holistic way, in that honest way, and in that felt sense. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that'll really resonate with people when they listen to this podcast. Where can we find you? If we want to have a look at some of these DVDs, these YouTube clips, DVDs, books, what's your information there, Roy?
Yeah. RoyDean.tv is kind of the headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
They have links to everything. I only do digital downloads now, but you can go to Amazon and order the DVDs. And I have apps as well. You can go on for Android and for iOS. You can go to Amazon. I have audiobooks, books. I try to do what I'm really trying to do is do one of everything and make it amazing. you
Yes.
know, and that's really the creative process. And I want to just continue offering something positive, and being able to make new friends around the world. And I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to meet and roll and share that really cool camp we did up in Los Angeles, and hopefully have more chats like this.
I look very much forward to it. Thank you so much for your time, Roy. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Take care, my friend.
You too.